Hi, dear students, I hope you will be absolutely fine. Today's topic under discussion is very interesting, and we almost all human beings and all living bodies inhale and exhale. We simply call it breathing. Biologically, this is also known as inspiration and expiration as well. When we breathe in, we in fact inhale. Suppose I am breathing in, I am in fact inhaling. And if I take my breaths out, I am exhaling. These can also be termed as inspiration and expiration biologically. Dear students, this topic is very interesting to know. Let us discuss what is breathing. Breathing is something that we all do without really realizing it. We breathe in and out about 22,000 times a day. We are powered by breathing. We are powered by breathing means we get all type of energy through breathing. There is basically oxygen mixed blood. When we breathe in, oxygen goes to our heart, it mixes through aorta from lungs, and then when heart beats, it circulates the blood to the entire body, and this thing enables us to get energy and to survive. Dear students, biologically there are four signs of survival, and from them one is breathing. We cannot survive without breathing, so breathing is almost very important for the survival of life. Our lungs fuel us with oxygen, our body's life sustaining gas. you know Here we would like to discuss that what is the role of oxygen and what is the role of lungs. Lungs are basically the organ of the body which enable us to mix oxygen with blood, and when heart beats it circulates blood throughout the body and we survive. So in other words, it can also be termed as fuel. So oxygen is a fuel of life. Oxygen, suppose our life is a vehicle, and vehicle cannot be driven without fuel, so our life runs at oxygen, and lungs are basically the source which provide oxygen to the body, and this thing in fact enables us to survive for the maximum time. Our body's life sustaining gas is oxygen, and our lungs breathe in air, then remove the oxygen and pass it through our bloodstream. Here, the point is very clear that our lungs breathe in air when we inhale. When we do inspiration, oxygen is mixed into blood through our lungs due to the help of aorta, which is main artery. Artery Arteries are those blood vessels which carry oxygen and oxygenated blood to the parts of the body. Whereas there are also blood vessels named as veins, and these help in carrying deoxygenated blood. Without oxygen, blood is carried through veins. You can observe uh, blood vessels through your body parts. These are very obvious and very clear to you. So when oxygen mixed blood goes back to the heart from the lungs, it is pumped in the blood vessels through arteries, and arteries help us in conveying the blood towards all parts of the body. Arteries further divide into arterioles, which carry single cell of the blood to the part of the body. Suppose if you open your eyes and you do like this, here you will notice that there are arterioles which are red in color. These carry one cell of oxygen and provide the organ, and in this way our organs are in their survival condition for proper functioning. Where Okay, next discuss where it's carried off to the tissues and organs that allow us to walk, talk, and move. If we are not getting oxygen, if we are not breathing, we cannot move, we cannot talk, we cannot walk. Our lungs also take carbon dioxide from our blood and released it into the air when we breathe out. During the daytime, when we are inhaling, we are getting oxygen from the atmosphere. And when we do exhaling, when we release our breath out of the body, in simple words, when we do exhalation or expiration, we are excreting carbon dioxide, which is CO2 gas, and it is used by plants in order to run the photosynthesis properly. Photosynthesis is a process in which plants prepare their food by themselves under the suitable conditions, which can be termed as catalyst. And catalyst for the production of the food through photosynthesis in plants is due to chlorophyll, which is a pigment of green color. Our lungs also take carbon dioxide from our blood and release it into the air when we breathe out. So if you're breathing out, we are excreting carbon dioxide, which is simply CO2, and when we do inhaling, we are getting oxygen, which is O, from the atmosphere. Our brain controls how fast our lungs draw in air. When we exercise or play, our brain tells our lungs as to work faster and faster. It entirely depends that how and what should be the rate of breathing. It is totally decided by the brain, and brain enables the lungs to work properly. How much amount of oxygen our lungs require and how much oxygen is required to our body, this decides the brain and actually stimulates the lungs to work accordingly. Our breathing and our lungs are precious, undoubtedly. There is no doubt that our lungs and um, our, our breathing are both things are very precious for the survival of life. We need to protect them. Here are a few facts about our breathing and lungs. Let's discuss. Your left and right lungs aren't exactly the same. They are not similar. Left and right lungs are different in their positions. The lung on the left side of your body is divided into two lobes. The lung on your right side is divided into three lobes. The left lung is also slightly smaller, allowing room for your heart. You know what? The size of our left lung is, smaller in size because it is to provide place to the beating heart. And sometimes your heart becomes dilated. It means the size of the heart enlarges and a heart starts its function the heart starts its function inappropriately, and this is basically a cardiovascular disease. Anyways, did you know that you can live with only one lung? It may be a question. We have talked that our lungs and breathing are important for the survival of life. They are very precious for us. But did you think that you can live with only one lung? Having just one lung limits your physical ability. Yes, you can survive, but you should limit your physical activity, because when you do physical activity, you require maximum amount of oxygen, and it can only be possible with the help of lungs function. And if a lung is missing, it means one lung cannot meet our needs of breathing and respiration. However, it doesn't stop you from living a relatively normal life. Yes, it may be possible if, unluckily, a lung of a person is diseased or it is ended, it's not functioned properly. He can survive, but he should limit his activity, plus he can live life normally, but in limitations. People who have a large lung capacity can send oxygen around their body faster. You can increase your lung capacity with regular exercises. If you have malfunctioning, if you have abnormal lungs, you can make them good through particular exercises which physiotherapists prescribe. Next, when resting, the average adult breathes. When resting, when we are taking rest, when we are in a comfortable condition, the average adult breathes around 12 to 20 minutes, 12 to 20 times a minute. This is basically the duration of inhalation and exhalation that a normal person who is taking rest will breathe in and out 12 to 20 times a minute. Lungs contain approximately and nearly 2,400 kilometers of airways and 300 to 500 million air sacs, which are simply called alveoli. There are about 600 million lung sacs, alveoli in your lungs. 1 million equals to 10 lakhs, and this is undoubtedly a large number. And for your kind information, if your breathing is not abnormal, you're not breathing in properly until you have oxygen in alveoli, which are simply called the air sacs. Your lungs are important for talking and singing. Above your trachea. Trachea is, in fact, this is which is made up of cartilage bone. So your lungs are important for talking and singing, and above your trachea there is windpipe, which is your larynx. And larynx, we have discussed it in previous lectures, that this is basically the voice box. This thing enables the waves and the sounds, the stimulus and impulses from the brain. This thing converts them into a voice. And voice box, which we simply know as larynx, it contains vocal cords. Vocal cords are folded. They are in a shape of having multiple sheets. They in fact vibrate, they oscillate, and through their vibrations and oscillations, they produce sound. The amount of air you force through them can change the pitch of the sound and also change the volume of the sound. If you talk slowly, and if your voice is light, so it entirely depends upon the air passing through this phase. Next one, breathing or ventilation is the process of moving air into and from the lungs to facilitate gas exchange. We do ventilation or we do breathing in order to exchange gases. Exchange means there is a normal level which is replaced. If we are breathing in, we are getting oxygen, and if we are breathing out, we are excreting and releasing carbon dioxide, which are in a proper proportion. This cannot be imbalanced, and if it imbalances, then there will be problems for you. So we do ventilation, which is a process of moving air in and from the lungs to facilitate the exchange with the internal environment, mostly to flush out carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen. All aerobic creatures which need oxygen for cellular respiration, which extracts energy from the reaction of oxygen with molecules derived from food and produces carbon dioxide as a waste product. When we do ventilation, we get oxygen, and using oxygen we get energy, and in return carbon dioxide is released out of the lungs as a waste product. Breathing or external respiration brings air into the lungs where gas exchange takes place in the alveoli through diffusion. Diffusion is a process in biology in which molecules move from higher concentration to lower concentration. The body's circulatory system, this is a system of the body which enables us to circulate the blood throughout the body, and heart is a pumping organ. It helps in circulating the blood. After mixing oxygen, lungs mix oxygen to the blood, and it is then sent to the heart through aorta, and then through an artery it is provided to the all parts of the body, and then returns deoxygenated blood to the heart again, and heart pumps it to the lungs, and same this process continues, and this becomes the cause of our survival. Okay, the body's circulatory system transports these gases to and from the cells where cellular respiration takes place. Our cells get energy through respiration. The breathing of all vertebrates. Here, vertebrates are those mammals, animals, those living objects who have vertebral column. And some animals don't have their vertebral columns, they are called invertebrates. So, the breathing of all vertebrates with lungs consists of repetitive cycles of inhalation and exhalation through a highly branched system of tubes or airways which lead from the nose to the alveoli. The process of breathing starts from our nostrils and then from lungs till lungs. And alveoli are the small sacs of air. The number of respiratory cycle per minute is the breathing or respiratory rate and is one of the four primary vital signs of life. If you are doing breathing, there is a vital sign that you are living normal life. Under normal conditions, the breathing depth and rate is automatically and unconsciously controlled by several homeostatic mechanisms. Here, breathing rate is actually automatically controlled. In biology, there are two types of actions: voluntary actions and involuntary actions. Voluntary actions are in control of living organisms. Suppose we want to walk, we want to sleep, we want to take rest, we want to jump. All pieces of work which are under our control and entirely depend upon our will to do are called voluntary actions. But there are also some actions which are out of control. We cannot stop them, like breathing. This is an involuntary action, like pumping of the heart. You don't want to stop it, and you would never be able to stop it because this is not in your control. So, all these things happen unconsciously and involuntarily. While you are sleeping, your heart goes on beating. While you are sleeping, you do breathing unconsciously and automatically. And all these things are controlled by homeostatic mechanism. Homeostasis basically is a biological term which regulates your body with respect to temperature, etc. Next, homeostatic mechanisms keeps the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide and oxygen in the arterial blood constant. It means that if we are inhaling, we are getting oxygen. We need a specific amount of oxygen, and if we are excreting and if we are releasing carbon dioxide, it has also a specific amount. A specific amount of carbon dioxide is also released from the lungs through breathing. And if there takes place an abnormality, we will have to suffer. We will have to face the problems regarding ailments. So, keeping the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide in the arterial blood unchanged under a wide variety of psychological circumstances contributes significantly to tight control of the extracellular fluids. These are basically abbreviated as ECF. These are extracellular fluids. Overbreathing. This can also be termed as hyperventilation. Overbreathing or hyperventilation, and underbreathing, hypoventilation. There are basically two types of solution in biology: hypertonic solution and hypotonic solution. Have you ever experienced that you go along with your parents and your siblings to the doctors, and they often complain that they are the patients of blood pressure? There are two types of problems relating to the blood, simply relating to the blood pressure. There is a problem named as hypertension, and there is also a problem named as hypotension. If your blood pressure is high, it is known as hypertension. And if your blood is low, it is named and termed as hypotension. Now try to understand what is blood pressure. Blood pressure is actually a pressure exerted by blood on the blood vessels. Okay, so overbreathing or hyperventilation, I tried to explain and make you conscious about hyper and hypo. So hyperventilation means excessive ventilation and excessive breathing, fastest breathing. And hypo means lowest rate of breathing, less rate of breathing. Underbreathing means hypoventilation, which decrease and increase the arterial partial pressure of carbon dioxide, respectively. If we are hyperventilating or hypoventilating, it will, you know, it destabilize the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the arterial blood, and it will cause a rise in pH of ECF in the first case and lowering of the pH in the second. If we are doing hypoventilation, it will lower the pH of the blood. Both cause distressing symptoms. Higher rate of respiration or breathing, I mean overbreathing, can also cause problems, and underbreathing, I mean hypoventilation, it also causes problems. Breathing has other important functions. It provides a mechanism for speech, laughter, and similar expression of the emotions. Breathing helps us in mechanism of speech. As we have early discussed, that it depends upon the air which is passing through your lungs and alveoli and trachea from eye spokes as well. It will produce your sound. The pitch of your sound depends upon the air which is passing through this this track, resulting in lower or higher pitch voices. It is also used for reflexes such as yawning, coughing, and sneezing. Animals that cannot thermoregulate by perspiration because they lack sufficient sweat glands may lose heat by evaporation through panting. Thermoregulation is basically the regulation of the body temperature, and perspiration is known as producing sweat in order to cool your body. When you are in higher temperatures, your body, your sweat glands produce sweat. And the objective of the production of sweat is to cool down your body temperature, because you have 37 degrees centigrade, which is optimum temperature of your body, and in Fahrenheit scale it's 98.6, and if it goes to the 100 you suffer from fever, and if it goes above 100, 101, 103, 104, you become the victim of severe temperature or fever. The muscles of breathing. Contraction of the diaphragm. Diaphragm is actually the part of the body which protects the heart and lungs under the ribs. This is diaphragm. If I am inhaling, it contracts, and if I am exhaling, it relaxes. So it happens with the help of diaphragm. So contraction of the diaphragm generally contributes the most to the expansion of the chest cavity. However, at the same time, the intercostal muscles pull the ribs upward and also causing the rib cage to expanding during inhalation. When we inhale, our diaphragm contracts and our ribs move upward, causing the expansion, which is actually the spread of our chest. And if it spreads higher, we get higher amount of oxygen through inhalation. The relaxation of all these muscles during exhalation causes the rib and abdomen to elastically return to their resting positions. You know, when our diaphragm relaxes, when we do exhalation, when we do expiration, our diaphragm relaxes, and it helps our body to relax, and it helps the muscles to relax, and our abdomen and our ribs are elastically returned to the normal position, which is in rest position. Next one is the intercostal muscles are aided by the accessor muscles of inhalation to exchange the movement of the ribs upward. Intercostal muscles are those muscles which help diaphragm or the body or the clavicle part of the body, which is from neck to the abdomen. These are called intercostal muscles. These muscles help our body during inhalation and exhalation, and it actually smoothens the elasticity. Elasticity can also be known as flexibility. During exhalation, apart from the relaxation of the muscles of inhalation, the abdominal muscles are actively contracted to pull the lower edge of the rib cage downward, decreasing the volume of rib cage while at the same time pushing the diaphragm upward deep into the thorax. Thorax is also the part where our heart and lungs are present. This area is known as thorax. And when we do inhalation and exhalation, our abdomen also contracts and relaxes. During exhalation, exhalation means breathing out. At rest, all the muscles of inhalation relax, and returning the chest and abdomen to position called the resting position, which is determined by their anatomical elasticity. Anatomical elasticity means the flexibility in the structure and texture of the body. Anatomy can also be known as external anatomy and internal anatomy. As it is clear from the names, external anatomy deals with the apparent parts of the body, and internal anatomy deals with the inner parts of the body. And basically, anatomy is a branch of biology in which we study internal anatomy and external anatomy with reference to the knowledge of biology. At this point, the lungs contain the functional residual capacity of air, which is in adult human as a volume of about 2.5 or 2-3 liters. When we are in rest, we are doing breathing normally, we are doing ventilation normally, we possess 2.5 to 3 liters of oxygen of air in our alveoli, which are called air sacs. During heavy breathing, hyperpnea, as for instance during exercise, exhalation is brought about by relaxation of all the muscles of inhalation, in the same way as at rest, but in addition, the abdominal muscles, instead of being passive, now contract strongly, causing the rib cage to be pulled downward. This not only decreases the size of the rib cage but also pushes the abdominal organs upward against the diaphragm, which consequently burns deeply into the thorax. If we are inhaling, our abdomen bulges. Bulge means inflamed. Look at this. If my belly is bulges, my belly bulges, it will restore air. It will stock air. It will become inflamed. It will become inflamed. However, in a normal mammal, the lungs cannot be emptied completely. We are mammals. Mammals are those living organisms who have hair on their bodies, who have airs outside, and who do who do suckling through mammary glands. Next one, in an adult human, there is always still at least 1 liter of residual air left in the lungs after maximum exhalation. In adult human, there is 1 liter of oxygen remaining when he is in rest, even doing after maximum exhalation. Diaphragmatic breathing causes the abdomen to rhythmically bulge out and fall back. Diaphragmatic breathing means if we have higher rate of breathing, it will bulge in and out our abdomen. This can also be named as abdominal breathing. These terms are often used interchangeably because they describe the same action. When the accessory muscles of inhalation are activated, especially during labored breathing, the clavicles are pulled upward. Clavicle are the area from the collarbone to the abdomen. These are called clavicle. Uh, Basically, you can see that the area of the collarbones are clavicles, and we sometimes feel our pulse here. It is basically the clavicle part of the body. It shows pulse as well, and we can notice that it is going to be palpitated. And the process of palpitation, this process is called palpitation. So, especially during labored breathing, the clavicles are pulled upwards, and this external manifestation of the use of accessory muscles of inhalation is sometimes referred as clavicular breathing, seen especially during asthma attacks and in people with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Pulmonary diseases are those diseases which are related to the lungs. And asthma is basically a disease with respiratory distress. You suffer from shortness of breath. You have narrowed your air sacs when you become the victim of asthma. You you seem to be suffering from shortness of breath, and there is a wheezing sound if you are inhaling and exhaling. Wheezing sound actually shows that you are producing whistling sounds while inspiration and expiration. These are basically the symptoms of asthma. And obstructive pulmonary disease is actually, obstructive means some type of obstruction, some type of hindrance while breathing. Inhaled air is warmed and moistened by the wet, warm, and nasal mucus. There is mucus and phlegm every time in our in our nostrils. These are called nostrils, and inside the nostrils there is mucus, and it it functions properly. It actually warms the air. If we are doing inhalation through our nostrils and the air is cool, it warms the air and then it goes inside the lungs. So its role is proper, its role is very crucial, which consequently cools and dries. When warm, wet air from the lungs is breathed out through the nose, the cold hygroscopic mucus in the cool and dry nose recaptures some of the warmth and moistures from the exhaled air. In very cold weather, the recaptured water may cause a dripping nose. When the weather is cool and you exhale, we feel that our nose is runny. If you are in fact motorcycling, so when cool breeze is passing through your nostrils and it goes directly to the lungs and it gets warmer, and you feel that your nose is runny because your nose has to sustain the cool air first. It has to deal with the cool air. It firstly warms the air through mucus and then it gets into the lungs. In very cold weather, the recaptured water may cause a dripping nose. So this is why that your nose is dripping. It is running. It can also be known as runny nose during winter season especially. This causes the inhaled air to take up moisture from the wet mucus and warmth from the underlying blood vessels, so that the air is very nearly saturated with water vapors and at last body temperature by the time it reaches the larynx. The part of the moisture and heat is recaptured as exhaled air moves out over the partially dried out cooled mucus in the nasal passages during exhalation. The sticky mucus also traps much of the particulate matter that is breathed in, preventing it from reaching the lungs. Particulate means to divide into the particles. So, the natural system of the respiratory system are the natural system of the respiratory system is very important. If you are breathing in warm air, it cools the air, and then it helps in um sending the air to the lungs. And when you breathe in warm, cool air, it warms the air and sends it into the lungs. So this process continues. The anatomy of typical mammalian respiratory system. Anatomy, it means how mammalian respiratory system is made up. Below the structure normally listed among the upper airways, the nasal cavities, the pharynx, the larynx is often described as a respiratory tree, and or respiratory tree or tracheobronchial tree. Larger airways give rise to the branches that are slightly narrower but more numerous than the trunk. Trunk is like stem and stem divides into the branches. So branches are called tracheobronchial tree. So in trunk airway that gives rise to the branches, the human respiratory tree may consist of average 23 such branchings into progressively smaller airways. The trachea. Now let's discuss the next one. Proximal deviants, those closest to the top of the tree, such as the trachea and bronchi, function mainly to transmit air to the lower airways. Later deviants, such as the respiratory bronchioles, are alveolar ducts, and alveoli are specialized for gases exchange. The trachea and the first portions of the main bronchi are outside the lungs. The rest of the tree branches within the lungs and ultimately extends to every part of the lungs. The alveoli are the blind-ended terminals. Blind-ended terminal means that these are every time opened, and as the air passes through them, it gets back through the same way. A system such as his creates dead space, a term for the volume of air that fills the air at the end of the inhalation and is breathed out unchanged during the next exhalation, never having reached the alveoli. Similarly, the dead space is filled with alveolar air at the end of exhalation, which is the first air to be breathed back into the alveoli during inhalation before any fresh air which follows after it. Gas exchange. The primary purpose of breathing is to refresh air in the alveoli. Although air is already present in the alveoli, but its purpose is to replace the air. So the gas exchange can take place in the blood. The equilibration of the partial pressure of the gases in the alveolar blood and the alveolar air occurs by diffusion. After exhaling, adult human lungs still contain 2.5 to 3 liters of air. Their functional residual capacity of or FRC. On inhalation, only about 150 milliliter of new, warm, moistened atmosphere air is brought in and is well mixed with FRC. Consequently, The gas composition of the FRC changes very little during the breathing cycle. This means that the pulmonary capillaries blood always equilibrates with the relatively constant air composition in the lungs, and the diffusion rate with arterial blood gases remain equally constant with each breath. Body tissues are therefore not exposed to large swings in oxygen and carbon dioxide tensions in the blood caused by the breathing cycle. And the peripheral and central chemoreceptors mirror only gradual change dissolved gases. Peripheral and central chemoreceptors are basically the parts of the brain which control the total procedure of breathing and ventilation. Thus, the homeostatic control of the breathing rate depends only on the partial pressure of the oxygen and carbon dioxide in the arterial blood, which then also maintains a constant pH of the blood. Next one is control of ventilation. The rate and depth of breathing is automatically controlled by the respiratory centers that receive information from the peripheral and central chemoreceptors. The chemoreceptors continuously monitor the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide and oxygen in the arterial blood. The first of these sensors are the central chemoreceptors on the surface of the medulla oblongata, which is the part of the brain, and stem of the brain, which are particularly sensitive to the pH as well as the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide in the blood and cerebrospinal fluid. For example, the exercise increases the production of the carbon dioxide by the active muscles. This carbon dioxide diffuses into the various blood and ultimately raises the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the arterial blood. This is immediately sensed by the carbon dioxide chemoreceptors on the brain stem. On the brain stem, there are chemoreceptors, and they identify either the amount of carbon dioxide is increased or not, and they act accordingly. If the exhaled air is breathed out through the mouth on a cold and humid conditions, the water vapor will condense into a visible clouds or mist. And atmospheric chemistry, it means we also exhale water vapors which become moist when the temperature of the external environment is low. And atmospheric chemistry include inhaled air is volume 78%, nitrogen 20.95%, oxygen, and small amounts of other gases including argon, carbon dioxide, neon, helium, and hydrogen. These are chemically inhaled gases during the process of breathing. Types of breathing problems. Your Your respiration rate, the number of times you breathe in a minute, is one of the vital signs your doctor checks when you visit. The normal rate depends on your age, but a typical adult takes between 12 and 20 breaths a minute when resting. You can measure your rate by counting the number of breaths you take in a minute. If you don't want to wait that long, you can count now how many you take in 15 seconds and multiply that number by 4. Hyperventilation is a problem which speeds up the rate of respiration, that throws off the balance in your blood. It throws off the balance in your blood. What type of balance? Balance of gases. Hyperventilation can be caused by things like exercise, anxiety, asthma. It can make you feel dizzy, weak, or confused. The traditional treatment is to breathe into proper bags. So you you breathe back in some of the carbon dioxide. But today, doctors recommend taking deep breath or covering your mouth and one of your nostrils to limit how much air gets in. If you have trouble calming down, ask someone to help you. Dyspnea. This is when you feel shortness of breath, like your body can't get enough air. It's a common symptom of many heart and lung problems, and it can be a sign of something serious like an asthma attack or heart attack. Get medical help right away if you are short of breath very suddenly. It also can happen if you are at a high altitude in poor physical condition or health, or if you are obese. In those cases, your doctor might recommend you special breathing exercises, or they may give you oxygen. Orthopnea, when you feel shortness of breath when you lie down, it often happens when people have heart failure, when blood can build up in their lungs. If if they lie down, sitting up or standing usually eases the problems. A similar condition called proximal nocturnal dyspnea can make you feel so short of breath and that you wake up in the middle of the night. This is also a symptom of heart failure. Trypopnea is a kind of dyspnea that happens when you lie on a certain side. It might happen when you lie on your left side, but not on your right, or the other way around. Palatopnea is a rare type of dyspnea that makes you feel short of breath when you are standing up. Lying down makes you feel better. Bradypnea. This is when you are breathing more slowly and than normal. It can mean your body is not getting enough oxygen. Bradypnea can be a sign of condition that affects your metabolism, or another problem like sleep apnea, carbon monoxide poisoning, or a drug overdose. Here I would like to explain metabolism. These are the collective reactions taking place within the body of living organisms. These are termed as metabolism. Tachypnea. This is the opposite of bradypnea. It means you are breathing faster than normal. It can be a sign of illness that limits how much air your lungs can take. Like pneumonia, you breathe faster to keep the same amount of oxygen and flowing into your body. It also can happen in people who are obese or in infants who have problems relating to the breathing. Hyperapnea. This is why you are breathing in more air but not necessarily breathing faster. It can happen during exercise or because of medical conditions that make it harder for your body to get oxygen, like heart failure or sepsis. Sepsis is a serious overreaction by your immune system. This type of breathing can sometimes make you hyperventilate. Castromal breathing. This pattern of fast, deep breaths sometimes happens in people who have problems related to diabetes, known as diabetic ketoacids. When you have diabetes, your body doesn't use sugar for energy the way it should. Instead, it burns stored fat for energy. This raises the level of acid in your body, and your body tries to get things back into balance by getting rid of more carbon dioxide. So you breathe in faster and and breathe out more deeply because it changes your body's chemistry. Good smell breathing can lead to fruity smelling breaths. And this was all about my lecture on breathing. Thank you so much for listening.